Ready to go.
Hi, everybody. Well, I am so excited to continue with really what Gus started, which is this like dive pro roundtable discussion. And I'm super excited about this particular guest. And let me tell you why. I didn't tell her I was going to say this, so she doesn't know this is coming, which is dive talk style. But I did a series out there on shear water, and I was talking a lot about gradient factors, M values, a lot of decompression stuff built into the shear water. It's got some amazing functionality. And I screwed some stuff up, right, about the tissue compartments, about the fast tissues and the slow tissues and all this. And Veronika jumped all over me in the comments, but there was something about the way she did it that I really liked her passion. And I could tell, wow, she knows what she's talking about. And those kind of comments I don't mind. So I'm really excited to introduce her again, Veronika Sievers or Silvers?
Sievers.
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 Okay. Let me give you a very quick bio of her, and then I'm going to tell you the topic. Everybody's been talking about it.
Yeah.
So she's been diving since 1998, Punkfish diving, La Palma, Canary Islands, been blowing up lately. I hope you guys are okay. It's had those volcanic eruptions. Um, so she's an SSI Instructor Trainer since 2017. You're an IANTD instructor up to technical diving. You do dive a CCR, the JJCCR. You're a hypoxic diver, and you use that as a hobby. You wanted me to say that. That's cool. You don't want that to be your business. I'm going to try to get her to be a dive talk go instructor. She doesn't know, but I'm going to be coming there with one. Anyway, and the other thing about her is that she is really, really technical. She is writing a book. I think you're writing a book about decompression theory, and you have a theory website, which I think is super cool. So for everybody out there, go to Punkfish. It's PUNKFISH dash, that's the middle dash, academy.com. Punkfish-academy.com. With a project to collect experience about our topic, narcosis. Today, that's what I'm going to be asking her about. And I sent her the questions. There's a lot of questions. Probably won't get through them all. But, there's a lot of people out there, and Veronika, that are, and I don't know why, but are quick to brag about diving and in particular about narcosis of all things. They're like, I get used to narcosis. It doesn't affect me. It's a bunch of hogwash. I can dive deep on air. So with that said, I want you to hold your passion on this a second. I'm going to get into it. I'm going to stop talking in a second. The very first thing I want you to do, and then I want to come back to this ridiculous statement, is let's talk about the causes of narcosis. Okay, let's start with the basics. What exactly causes narcosis when scuba diving at certain deep depths? Can you explain the physiological mechanisms behind it? Let's just start with that.
Yeah. Okay. That's easy enough and complicated enough, to be honest, because um, we are actually not 100% sure what causes this. Like, we know a lot about the effects of narcosis. We know the symptoms. We are quite confident that we recognize narcosis. But if you ask how exactly it works, there is a big, big question mark. There is something that, like, the information flow in the brain and the synapses is interrupted somehow by the gases. And this might have to do with the fat solubility of gases, and that they kind of like block this little fatty material in between the cells, and that therefore it interrupts the flow of information. So this is what is guessed to be the mechanism behind it. But it's not that it's like 100% measurable or something like this. It's like it's something we suspect it to be like this. And there are good reasons to believe it is somehow like this. But there is nothing like, hey, when you reach this dose, you will have this kind of reaction or something. There is a big, big question mark in this. And in most of this subject, honestly, it's like, yeah, it's a very wild subject.
I think it's amazing, isn't it? We really, in this day and age, we still aren't really sure. And I've asked a lot of people that question, and it's exactly the same answer, but it does lead to the controversial question.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we started this, and that is the adaptation to narcosis. Because what we do know is there's science behind it. We do know what happens. So there's a debate that's
Mm-hmm.
ongoing within the diving community about whether divers can get used to narcosis over time. So I want to know, is there any scientific evidence that supports or refutes the idea that divers can acclimate to being narked? And why would they brag about it anyway? I mean, what's the
Yeah.
concept of this ego with that? So talk about this adaptation theory.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're like 2 points in it. The one is like people who think they are better or the coolest guys when they can dive deep on air. This is like something we honestly don't need. I mean, the most of my tech diving friends in their life did deep dives on air. We did this because I mean, and we don't always had available the gases we have now. Yeah, and I mean, we all were young and a little bit crazy, and we did things we would not promote today. Okay, but it's a freaking dangerous thing to do, and it's never the best choice. Yeah, so yeah, for sure, I can be on 50 meters with air, and I will be able to handle situations. But this is not because we get used to the narcosis, and the problem is it is a little bit unpredictable from day to day. So there is one thing you can train actually, and this is sustained scientifically. You can train how to react or how to handle situations. So, because what is affected with the narcosis is our capacity of solving problems and of finding solutions and like our thinking capacity. But we are still absolutely able to do kind of mechanical tasks that we have trained for a long time. So a very confident diver who is like well inside the own limits with what he's doing might be able to handle a certain grade of narcosis just because he does not need to think too much in this moment. But it's a little bit comparable to, for sure, you can drive after having 5 beers. Yeah, you can drive your car. Absolutely, you can. The problem is that if someone jumps on the street, you're not able to slow down and you might kill someone just because your reactions suffer. So this is the point. You are not able to react the way you normally react. And but the problem is that all that we know about this, there's a little bit that we know like from testings that have been done. Like I want to talk about this in some moment. My favorite
Yeah.
study is like with different gases and the influence of different gases. So you can measure kind of the reaction time and things with different gas pressures. But what we know from real diving situations is just things that people tell us after the dive. It's like it's impossible to get the real science behind this because we can't run tests with people on air on 60 meters depth. It's like no one will do this because it's like not in open water. But this is where narcosis happens, not in a pool, or probably as well in a pool, but like not, it's very likely just not the same a real situation and a test situation.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about that, exactly your point. And the point is, it's always good until it's bad. And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that, it builds this sense of false confidence because people will go on a dive. They're not really doing much. They're not multitasked. And more importantly, they're not faced with a problem, potentially a life-threatening problem. So it went well. And they think then I'm fine. I'm not narc, right? Because everything went fine. You see, I proved my point. That's what they say.
Mm-hmm.
But if they had a big problem, and they had to deal with more than one thing, especially with technical diving, right? With rebreathers. We have particular procedures we do when we have problems. And many of those procedures, as you know, involve a lot more than one step that need to be done in a certain order. I know me, I'm pretty narked after 100 feet. I am the absolute wimpiest diver you've ever met. So I would not want to be having to do those various tasks in the right order, because doing the wrong one, like, I know I'll just shoot a bunch of O2 into myself and I'll feel better if I was narked at 250 feet. How would that go? So that is to your point. So that does get into oxygen. That's why I led into this, right? Oxygen. I've heard this before so many times. I don't feel narked when I'm using oxygen. I said, okay, well, can you give me some information? So is oxygen itself considered narcotic at depth? And how does the partial pressure of oxygen contribute to or mitigate the effects of narcosis, if there's any truth to that at all?
I mean, it's one of these lots of subjects where I will just tell you that I know a lot about it, but I have no idea. Why? Very easy. The most important point here is that we will never experience oxygen with a partial pressure that could make us narked, because oxygen toxicity hits so much earlier. So we talk about very limited amounts of oxygen that, like in a real calculation, if I decide to calculate my equivalent narcotic depth with oxygen as narcotic or not, does not really affect my mix so very much. It's like well,
little percentage.
It's not so. It's a lot of discussion about virtually nothing. There are big myths around this, like myths surrounding nitrox, and a lot of people do claim that they are so much fitter and so much more awake and so much better with nitrox, but there is absolutely no evidence for this. There is a small evidence that nitrox might be a little bit less narcotic than air, and that gives us a hint that oxygen might not be narcotic. Like, let's see, the idea that oxygen should be narcotic is because oxygen is very, very highly soluble in fat. And normally this is a sign for a gas to be narcotic, but not necessarily. Oxygen gets metabolized in the body, so we use it. It's not there after it passes our body, or not. It's not all there anymore. So there is it's kind of an open question, and there is this hint in studies about nitrox where we see that people breathing a 40% nitrox compared with people breathing air in a pressure chamber at 30 meter have like a higher level of arousal when they breathe nitrox compared with air. It's like it's quite normal that when we descend, like in the first moment, we are really like awake and there and very our attention levels are really high, and then this drops, and it drops a lot when diving with air, and it drops just a little bit when diving with nitrox. But does this really mean it's less narcotic? Because is this the only point of what narcosis means? It's not just about our attention level. There's so much more into narcosis than the attention level that is just measured by like critical flicker fusion frequency, this like lights making until they you see them as one light. And is this really measuring what we want to know about narcotic effects? I'm not sure, honestly. Like, I don't say no, but I don't say yes for sure this measures exactly what I want to know. I don't know. Like, yeah, most of the times I end with I don't know.
Yeah, but I could see how people could point to those studies and like happens so often, exaggerate the little flickering was better for their clarity. And that means everything's better, right? It's an exaggeration. So it's dangerous. It's dangerous to rely on that as that is for all situations. Yeah. So how about some more on the scientific data? I wrote out these questions. These were just things that I thought about that I keep hearing about in comments. What does the scientific data say about the long-term effects of repeated exposure to narcosis? And are there studies that show divers can or cannot adapt to the sensation over time? I know I'm repeating that question a little bit, but that's the most controversial one. So I want to dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's like there, I don't know anything about this, like long-term effects of being continuously exposed to this kind of narcosis. What I can say, like from experience, is like, no, I'm not. It happens to me just the same as before, and like that. What we know is that the effects you mentioned, I think you mentioned something very important before, this point of, while everything is smart and easy, everything is all right, and it feels like you control it. There is this one study where they did put people under really high pressures, like equivalent to 60 meters on air, like really high pressures in a chamber where you can do this. And they add like more oxygen and more carbon dioxide and things like this. And there's one very, very interesting result. And this is about the self conception of these people in the tests. They did various tests with them, not and they did like reaction tests, like what you usually use for airplane pilots and things like this. Like you get a message, you have to you have to repeat it, you have to set things together, and like a lot of testing. And the people who had a very high nitrogen level got horrible results in the tests. But when they were asked how they felt about their test result, they thought they did really, really well.
Mm,
So it is not no surprise that people who have been deep and everything went well think they did really well, but very likely it is not measurably like this. And this
mm,
turns over when there's carbon dioxide in the game. Because once there is a higher level of carbon dioxide, people realize they are not doing wrong. They even feel worse than they actually are, because the carbon dioxide part, which is narcotic as hell as well, but it
mm,
does something else. It makes you like short of breath, and it creates anxiety. So very likely, this is like, I can't prove this, but very likely the level of carbon dioxide affects a lot more on how we perceive narcosis, not on how it is, but how our perception is. Because there is this like nice, beautiful narcosis, like this, like
mm,
yeah, you had a beer at the beach and all feels fine. And then there is this narcosis, like, holy shit, something is really off now,
mm,
and all I want to do is get up and get back somewhere where I'm comfortable again. And there's like a real incredible difference between these two settings. And it's like it can turn around. And I think this turning point, when it turns from being something nice that you control to this goes out of control, is exactly when something goes wrong and you have to breathe a little bit harder. Sometimes it's enough to have a bit of a current, and you have to work a little bit more, and it starts to feel a little bit different. So a person who tells me everything was fine in 30-degree warm water with 100 meter of visibility, yes, well, enjoy, relax, have fun. But what happens when the water is moving and the visibility is worse and it's getting colder and you move in a dry suit and with big luggage, and
mm.
things are different then.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny you kind of touched on the next question I was gonna talk about. A lot of new divers, because I like to talk to brand new divers as well. We don't want to just
Mhm.
talk to
Yeah.
the experienced diver. They'll ask, well, what is the sensation of narcosis, right? They haven't experienced it. What does it feel like to be narked? Or I've even heard instructors almost make it like something that's cool when they're teaching a
Mm,
class. They're like, "Oh, I love being narked. It's such a great feeling." And that's dangerous, right? Because they're brand new divers. So, you know, for me, the sensation of being narked is I have at times been narked, and it's a very it is sort of like, for me, I get into a too chilled, too of a relaxed mode, but then I start to feel bad. I don't like the feeling, right? I start to feel like I can't think. I just can't. I want to think, but I can't think. So I don't, anyway, you described a couple of the other feelings as well. How would you respond to divers who say that the dangers of narcosis are exaggerated and it's not really dangerous, especially if you get used to it?
It is dangerous. It is, I mean, I absolutely understand the point that it is enjoyable as well. Yeah, for different people in a different way. I mean, some of us like to drink two beer and they like the feeling, and some people don't like to drink two beer because they don't like this feeling, and that's absolutely okay. So I'm okay with enjoying a bit of narcosis as long as I really control it, like what you describe as being overly relaxed is an alarm sign for me, because it means, okay, you have to focus on your dive plan and make sure make sure you don't ruin your limits. I mean, you have a plan, and when you touch any of your limits, you start to go up, completely independent on how nice it is in this moment. And if I'm not sure that I can do this because I get so relaxed, I go up right now, like because it's absolutely not worth it. But this is like a feeling that does happen deep, like beyond, for most people this is beyond normal recreational 40-meter limits. At 40 meters everyone feels something, but not the 40-meter limit is there for a reason, and the reason is exactly the narcosis risk. It's still not the oxygen, but narcosis and gas planning sucks deeper than 40 with a single tank. So there are these two things, and if your narcosis takes over and you forget your gas planning, then this is the dangerous point. Not the fact that you are narked, but the fact that you just don't care about your gas planning. And this is like the main reason for people dying underwater, is that they just run out of gas, which is so incredibly avoidable. And this is, for me, the main point. But there is as well something else that people experience when they dive shallower. I would not call this narcosis, honestly, but some people do call it narcosis. But we all get freaking stupid underwater. The most intelligent people forget everything they ever knew once they stick their head underwater. It's something that I even tell people in try dives, because they then come out of the water like, oh my God, why did I do this? And like, no worries. It's like, this is absolutely normal. You're in a completely new environment, and there's like, there are things happening with you. And so your levels of attention, your ability to focus on specific things is not as it normally is on land. And like, to remember how something works that you did not train a lot is really difficult. I mean, people mix up their inflator buttons, and I mean, they are not stupid, they can differentiate between two buttons. It's really not that difficult, but underwater they can't, or it's like, it's a long way to learn this. So this is a normal thing underwater. And now add to this that your thinking decreases with the depth. And so this is why it's like, you don't really have to understand the neurological impacts of nitrogen narcosis when you only dive 10-20 meters. But you should know that there is a thing called nitrogen narcosis. You should know that depth affects you, and it affects different people in a different way. Some people just don't like to be deeper than 20, and that's absolutely fine. Like, everyone has a personal limit where you feel good and where you like to be. And this is the place where you want to dive. and absolutely no one gets bigger balls for diving deeper. I've been trying this
Love
for a
that.
long time. I still don't have balls, and they will not grow. And honestly, I don't
Uh,
need them because we don't
right.
need them for diving at all. Like the technical divers I know are completely different in this. It's like I come to a point where I don't feel okay on this dive for whatever reason. We go up, that's it. It's so easy. I mean, I'm special in less in not doing dives that I planned because there's something off and something is not okay in this moment. Okay, turn around, do something else, go for a coffee. That's it.
Exactly.
Fine.
I
Like,
know.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I wish I could replay that segment of your words right there over and over and over.
Yeah,
Get rid of the
make
ego.
make a
There,
gif
this
out of
is
it. It's like, yeah,
man, I'm old, everybody in the dive world. It didn't exist. I remember in the 70s, like we didn't have this. We just wanted to go underwater and catch some lobster and enjoy. Like it's just an activity. I mean, we're not competing. It's not a sport, in my opinion.
mm,
Be safe. I mean, if we were meant to be underwater and it was so easy, we wouldn't need all this gear and have all these discussions, and have to put on all this skin protection. We're land mammals, which is interesting, by the way. I've heard that whales and dolphins and some mammals do get NARP. I don't know how they know that, but anyway, that's just a whole nother discussion. Okay, one or two more questions because you are full of knowledge, and I want the world to hear you. Mitigation strategies, if they exist, are there effective strategies or techniques that divers can use to mitigate the effects of narcosis aside from limiting the depth or dive time? And I say this question carefully because maybe they just do need to limit their depth and dive time instead
mm,
of thinking they can mitigate it. But what do you think?
yeah. It's like it's a very tricky thing. Yeah, because as we've seen before, like everything yet that you have well trained will work still when you're not. So you can kind of make sure that your skills are perfect and that you kind of don't lose your skill level because your brain is fogged. But this will not take away the narcosis at all. It just helps you to handle situations. And then you can take like different decisions depending on the circumstances. So for me, it's sometimes like we have currents, yeah, and we do shore diving with like rough entries and currents and not that easy. So sometimes we go to the water and we say, okay, if everything is really fine, we do this 50-meter round. I do this on air. I confirm, admit it. Yeah, I don't do it on a rebreather for very good reasons because there I can afford the helium, and I really don't want to mix up narcosis and a CO2 hit. So no way I do 50 meters on air with a rebreather, but on open circuit from time to time, yeah. Um, but then when I go down and I see the conditions are not good, so there is a kind of a current or something, I change the plan and we stay shallower because this is just when everything is nice and fine and easy. Um, Partially because of the carbon dioxide buildup that I don't want to experience. So when I have to struggle, I can't go as deep as I would be when everything is nice, clear, easy, warm, and everything is working perfectly well. And but basically, at the end of the day, if you really want to be safe, it's like switching to Trimix when you want to go deeper.
Yep.
And I mean, in your place, helium is still kind of affordable. Like for us in Europe, it's like it's a big issue. You have a little bit more
Mm,
better access. Yeah. Um, with helium, it comes to a rebreather sooner or later, or just to, hey, if you don't want to do this, just stay a little bit shallower. There's so much to see, and it's fine. Because what we can kind of mitigate the narcosis, but what we never can mitigate is the density of the gas. And
hmm
this is like the other factor that makes narcosis risky because this is
hmm
the carbon dioxide built up clue. it's probably even more important than the narcotic effect of nitrogen itself. So it's a point that really like is not very much in the discussion, but I think it's like very, very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like I did feel the difference. Like I did this crazy things on air, lacking other possibilities, and then I just got a bottle of helium and someone who could show me how to use this, and this was like very close. The next step was the rebreather, because there was just no way back after I once experienced how it is
Mm-hmm.
to be at 60, 70 meter with a clear head.
Mm-hmm.
And then like when going further, it was very clear that, yeah, okay, I can be at 40 meters a little bit narked. I tolerate 50 meters a little bit narked, but I can't tolerate a lot more because it does not feel good anymore. And then like on the deeper dives with Trimix, I found out that it's like, yeah, okay, I would not like to be narked in this depth, because the depth itself is challenging, and
Mm-hmm.
it's serious. You look at your computer and you see, hey, surface gradient 300, three fucking, I mean, you really can't go up now. That's it. So
Wow.
um, and you don't want to be narked when you realize how far away the surface actually is. Like you
Mm-hmm.
want to feel good and like with all your senses working in this moment. So yeah, I'm not an advocate for deep air diving anymore. I was never an advocate, but like I did never say it was a good idea. But sometimes people do things that are not a good idea, and but it's so nice to be able to just put some helium in your mix, because it just makes your
Definitely.
dive so much better. So I would not really try to train for narcosis, but better like train for using the proper mix.
I love that, and I agree. It's way better for me.
Mm,
I just don't feel good at all when I'm narked. Okay, so it's just sort of a final question. You touched on it. Let's wrap it up with this because I think it's important. I know a lot of instructors will watch this as well. Let's talk a little bit more. Final question about training and awareness,
mhm.
because that's what we're having these discussions for and bringing professionals in like you for. How should, in your opinion, dive training programs then address narcosis? Because the reason I think we needed to ask this question is something must be going on wrong for people to be bragging about it so much. Do you think current certification courses adequately prepare divers for the potential risks and how to handle them?
In general, I would say yes. Like I just rechecked the SSI materials and what they write about narcosis already in the open water manual, and it's like it's correct, it's complete. But in the open water course, people don't even experience this. So we talk about it a little bit, but it's not the place where they have other problems in this moment, and that's absolutely okay. So for me, talking about narcosis takes place when we do the step to 30 and to 40 meters, depending on how it's called in your agency. For SSI, this is like the deep diver course where you go to
Deep
40
dive,
meters.
yeah.
And there's like one very important point for me. It's like you are allowed to do deep dive certifications with people without actually going to 40 meters. And I don't like this. When someone does this course with me, we do two dives to 40 meters, actually, 240 meters and to the no decompression limit. It happens that afterwards they still don't want to do this when they are on their own, but they know they can do it with me, and they really have this experience and they can find out how it feels for them. um,
Awesome.
and then what I don't do is like this calculation stuff underwater, because it's very
Mm,
common that you kneel down somewhere at 30 meters and then you do some calculations that you do on land as well, and then but I never got an interesting result out of it, other than Like the interesting results were trying to do it hovering and seeing if people are still able to maintain their neutral buoyancy. But you have to make sure they are able to do it in shallower waters before. And
Right.
depending on how they are trained, it sometimes sucks. But I don't take people who need to kneel down to do things.
Yeah.
I don't take them to 30 meters. That's it. We get this sorted before. So once you're at 30, you stay there hovering, period. No
Beautiful.
way that you stretch the ground anymore. Um,
Nice.
and then it's like I want to do I want to see other things though. So my one thing is that I ask them to be aware about their gas consumption. We set a
Hmm.
minimum gas limit. They are like aware that hey, with less than 120 more or less in your 12-liter tank are really dangerous at 40 meters, because if I run out of air, we don't get up both together nicely. So make sure you have enough gas. And I want them to know how much gas they have in every moment. And this is when I start to
Great.
ask them and I tell them, okay, tell me your gas, then check your pressure gauge, and then tell me if you are correct or if you are have if you have more or less than what you just told me. Um, be aware about your computer. Tell me how much time you have left, and then check if you are correct.
That's
And
so awesome.
because this is when they realize, sometimes it's like I asked them when I saw them checking their pressure gauge. I asked them 30 seconds later and they don't really remember. And this is when you realize, hey, you saw this situation, you did not remember something you did check a minute before. This is narcosis, actually.
Mm.
And then I give them two computers and I change the settings of one of them to the most conservative level. So they actually run into decompression, even if the course is no decompression diving. So they understand what their computer tells them, because I can teach them that they should not do decompression dives. But in some moment it can happen. And if they then see their computer doing something stupid and they say, oh, my computer does something stupid, I have to go up fast, they are just fucking it up completely. So I prefer that they're
That's
like,
so
oh,
good.
oh, I'm so sorry, I fucked it up a little bit, but I know what to do and I do my decompression and I stay longer in shallower depth if I did this. That's it. I don't go up like hell. I just do this, and the next time I take more care. But they are more able to get out of the water safely if they're not surprised by what their computer tells them. Like, there are too many people running around who wear a computer on their arm but can't read it. And it's like, yeah, you don't have to wear a computer, but if you wear it, you probably want to use the manual as well and like understand what
Yes.
it's going to use.
I would love to take your deep class. I can tell it's really good. Like you're really trying to make it reality and you're really trying to make them think underwater and think like a diver. And I love what you
Mm,
said. And it's really funny because Ed Sorensen does this. He's really big about this. When you take his rebreather class, he will ask you what PO2, he'll put you on a semi-closed mode, right? So
mm,
you're basically going semi-closed and he wants to see that you know how that rebreather is working for you without using the computer.
mm,
So be like, okay, what's your PO2 now? Like how many breaths does it take you to bring down that PO2 to a
mm,
certain level? So you know how it's working for you, which is
yeah,
similar to what you're saying right there. Like, do you know
yeah,
what's going on and how
yeah.
accurate are you as compared to your computer? That's a really smart approach. Well, thank you so much. Is there any final words or thoughts or anything you want to throw out there? Because this is your chance to tell the world whatever you want about narcosis as we wrap this up.
Yeah, I mean, I can do a little bit of advertising because actually
Okay.
we are collecting information still. It's like on this Punkfish Academy page, we not only sell some theory courses as well, but we have this part about narcosis, which I will fill with a little bit more information in the next days, because you just picked me and told me I had this like laying here for ages. I will just finish this now. Um, and what we want is um, that people just send us descriptions or stories about their narcosis. We already have some from 30 meters, from 40, from 50, from wherever. We don't judge. It's like, tell us how it felt, where it happened, what happened. Absolutely zero judgment. We can, you can tell us whatever you want. We know what we're talking about, and we are absolutely happy to hear this, because I'm convinced that this is finally the clue of understanding narcosis is much more in the stories than in science, because
So where do
basically
they
it's about
send?
what we feel like and not what we can measure.
Yes. So do they just go to the website and that's where they'll send you the information? Is there a
Yeah,
link there?
yeah,
Okay.
there's a little questionnaire, and then with this I get the information, and
Okay.
they
So
can
the
just get in
website.
contact with me.
Okay. And I'm going to post it. Go ahead.
Punkfishacademy.com. Yeah.
Punkfish-academy.com,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. You got to put that middle dash. I will put it in the video description as well. Everybody give Veronika as much data as we can, right? It only helps the whole dive world, and she knows what she's talking about. I think that's obvious. So let's help her. I'm going to do that. And thank you. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Okay.
And this will not be our last interview. I have many other topics.
I hope there's so many things. So yeah.
There are. So thank you very much.